Alright guys, we're moving on to the next page. We're looking at square root functions. Again, I'm just going to do these two just to give you an idea of how to solve these. Now, we're looking at this problem and we're thinking, okay, that's the square root equals, a square root of a number equals a whole number. So we're going to ask ourselves, what can we do to solve this problem? And one thing that we know is that if we take a number, say for example 4, the square root of 4, and square that, we're going to end up with 4, because the square root of 4 times the square root of 4 is going to give us 4. So that is kind of one of the ways that we like to solve this, is we take each side and we take that square root, and to get rid of the square root, we square it. We do the opposite. These are opposite or inverse operations. But before you do that, you need to make sure you isolate it. So isolate your square root. You isolate this, which means that this is the only thing on that side. In this case, it already is, so we're good. So if we take this whole thing, if we take 2x minus 4 and raise it to the second power, we're going to then get 2x minus 4, because the square root of 2x minus 4 times the square root of 2x minus 4 will give us 2x minus 4. That is why we're doing it. But we also know that what we do to one side, we have to do to the other. So we have to take this 12 and square that as well. So I'm going to be left with a 12 squared, which is 144. Now we just have an equation of 2x minus 4 equals 144. I can solve that just using inverse operations. So I can add 4 to both sides. 2x equals 148. Then we divide by 2. And I'm going to get x equals, I think that's 74. 74. So that's how you do that. Now, these are the same, except for you're going to notice that here you've got a square root minus x. This you've got a number in front of that. This you've got all this going on. So you're going to need to kind of get this square root by itself. Let's do this one real quick, and then we'll go and do that one, because that one is a little more complicated. So to get the square root by itself, first you're going to subtract 1 from both sides, and I'd be left with 2 with the square root of x minus 3 equals 6. I still don't have my radical on its own. I want to divide by 2. So divide by 2, and I'd get the square root of x minus 3 equals 3. Now at this point I have my radical by itself, so I can square both sides. And I can take that and raise that, but you have to square both sides. So this is the same thing as the square root of x minus 3 times the square root of x minus 3. And as we kind of talked about up here, anytime you have the square root of something times the square root of the exact same thing, the answer is x minus 3 is going to be what's inside that radical. So I'm going to get x minus 3 here equals 3 squared is 9. Okay, so now I just add 3 to both sides. Make sure you square that 3, and I'm left with x equals 12. Now I can check my answer and bring it up here and say, okay, 2 square root of 12 minus 3 plus 1, does that actually equal 7? 2 times the square root of 12 minus 3 is 9, plus 1, does that equal 7? 2 times 3 plus 1, 3 times 2 is 6. 6 plus 1 does equal 7. So I've checked my answer. Okay, that's how you do that. Now let's do this one. This one's a little more complicated, because this is not by itself. I'm going to write this on a different piece of paper because it's kind of hard to see. So this is basically the square root of x plus 7. Oops, I did that too big. minus x equals 3. Okay, the square root ends right here. So I need to isolate this, so I'm going to add x to both sides. And I'm going to get the square root of x plus 7 equals, this cancels out, x plus 3. Now I want to square both sides. So I'm going to take this, square that, take everything over here, and square that. When I multiply the square root of x plus 7 times the square root of x plus 7, we're going to get x plus 7. Yay! X plus 7 equals. Now, here's where this kind of gets complicated, because you've got a binomial here, and you need to FOIL that. So make sure you FOIL it. So this is the same as x plus 3 times x plus 3. See, because it's being squared. So you're going to get x squared, and then plus 3x plus 3x plus 9. Or for those of you who saw that this is a perfect square trinomial, you may have been able to just jump to the fact that this is x squared plus 6x equals 9. Now I've got x plus 7. I'm still trying to solve, so I need to get 0 on the side, so set equal to 0. So I'm going to subtract x from both sides, and I'm going to get 7 equals x squared plus 5x plus 9, and then I'm going to subtract 7 from each side, and I'm going to get 0 equals x squared plus 5x plus 2. Now, you're going to look at that and you're going to say, oh, okay, now I need to factor that. Let me use my big X. I'm going to say, what two numbers multiply to give me 5 and add to give me 2? And you're going to be like, none. None multiply to give me 2 and add to give me 5. So then you're going to say no solution, and that's going to be wrong. Please do not do that. The other way that you need to solve this is through the quadratic formula. Because whenever you cannot factor, you can always use the quadratic formula. And I know that that's really pulling some tool out of your toolbox, your math toolbox, or tool that you haven't used in a while. But it is x equals negative b plus or minus the square root of, oh my goodness, negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. I have to sing it. 2a. Okay? Negative b plus or minus the square root of b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. This is your a, this is your b, this is your c. So it's going to be negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 5 squared minus 4 times 1, which is a, times c, which is 2, all over 2 times a is 1. This is going to give you your zeros, or your x-intercepts. So we get x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 25 minus 8 all over 2, which is x equals negative 5 plus or minus the square root of 17 divided by 2. Now you can actually plug it in your calculator and figure out what your actual number is, and you get negative 5 plus the square root of 17. That is that divided by 2. So one of your x values is negative 0.4. We'll just do it to 3 decimal points. 0. Your other 0 is going to be negative 5 minus the square root of 17 divided by 2. And that would be negative 4.5. 5, 6, 2, 0. So here are your answers. If you give me this, that's fine, but I really want you to get used to working it all out. All right, that one was quite difficult, and but not certainly something that you guys can't do. You're very capable of doing that. All right, and that's it for this one.